What's the best way you've seen someone rebel against school rules? Story 1! During my senior year of high school, 2008, my school got super strict about cell phones. It got to the point that we weren't allowed to have them out during any point in the day, not even during our lunch period. They claimed that we would send each other test answers or something like that. Anyway, a friend of mine who was a year below me was tired of the rule and how rude teachers were when enforcing it. He literally took his phone to check the time and got it taken from him for the rest of the day. That next week, he comes to lunch with two older/non-functioning flip phones. He takes the first out and pretends that he's talking to someone on it. A teacher was instantly on him. They walk over and hold out their hand for him to give it up. He looks at the teacher and then proceeds to break the flip phone in half and puts it in their hand. The teacher was speechless. She just walked away without saying anything. He takes the second phone out and does the same thing again. The second teacher thought it was pretty funny. Flash forward to 2015 and I start working at the school as a student mentor, and now everyone is allowed to have their phones out pretty much at any time. How things change. Well, my senior year of high school was 2001-2002, and we didn't have cell phones for the most part. I did. I had a job, and I put it towards getting, at first I had like a big phone, like it was a brick about this big. You could kill a person with it. But eventually I got a Panasonic phone that was like the size of a little candy bar. But I never used it in school because literally no one I knew had a cell phone. So what was I going to do? Play Snake all day? Nah, I got better things to do. And also, I eventually flushed that Panasonic phone down a toilet. Story 2. I was at a private school that had rules about the length of boys' hair. One guy in particular always ignored the rule, and the administration would tell him to get a haircut every so often, but he never did. Eventually, when his hair got down to about his shoulders, the principal pulled him aside and told him his hair was twice the allowed length, and by next week it needed to be shortened by half. Monday rolls around and he comes in with half his head shaved and the other side as long as ever. We were impressed by the literal interpretation of the principal's request, but it still ended up with him getting a suspension for a week, and he had to shave the other side before he could come back. I went to a private school that told me I couldn't have hair past my neck. I loved having long hair, so I did it anyway. They told me my hair had to change over the weekend, so I dyed it pink, which was also against the rules. Long story short, I'm no longer at that school. Should have tied the hair and made a bun out of it on top of your scalp. Technically, it wasn't past your neck. He should have just combed the other half over. This is not a problem that someone like me has really encountered. That's actually not true. Back in my 20s, I actually had hair like down to here, but you'll never see. I hate schools that have hair rules. My gosh, do they just feel so puritanical and outdated. Just let kids do whatever they want with their hair. It's one of their, few forms of expression. They get hair and clothes kind of sometimes. God's sakes, adults, you're real stuffy buttholes. Story 3. After 9/11, my school made a rule where we had to wear our school IDs. They went overboard, quickly handing out detention to anyone who didn't wear one. One kid had his ID blown up and put on a shirt. On the back it said, "Yes, I'm wearing my effing ID." He got detention for not wearing it with the shirt. They're bringing back all that ID stuff where I go. Why don't they just tattoo identification numbers on all the inmates? I mean, students. We had to do that after Columbine. Some genius decided that they should have our picture, name, year, and full address printed on the front and had to be worn on a neck lanyard at all times. Even when teachers with children at the school complained, the administration didn't want to backtrack. They threatened students who obscured the info with stickers with punishment for vandalism. Then suddenly it all went away. I wouldn't be surprised if the school district lawyer had some concerns. We had to do that too, but then everyone started using them as weapons and whipping the crap out of each other in the hallway, or Indiana Jones snapping it at some Peters. It lasted less than a year before they took them away. Story 4. My high school was always issuing new dress code rules for the girls. Miniskirts had to be longer than your arm, no tube tops, etc. One day, all the boys dressed in drag, breaking all the rules. No violation because the dress code specified only girls. That's BS. If you got long ape arms, you gotta wear stuff down to your knees. If you got short butt T-Rex arms, you can't just walk around in your underwear. Story 5. Elementary school had a ban on extreme hair colors. My brother showed up with fire truck red hair. Principal stops us both as we're entering the school, and she's going off on my brother. She's berating him, saying, "Who do you know that has red hair like that?" Without skipping a beat, Ronald McDonald. The principal just grabbed him and drug him into the office. My 4th grade brain was in shock that he just one-upped a grown-up like that. She called my dad, and he promptly didn't give an F, and months later, bro went from red to green to purple. Folks, I gotta tell you, while you've got hair, have fun with hair colors and wild hairstyles. I've had red hair, blue hair, green hair, black hair. I've had like a calico hair. That one wasn't totally on purpose, but I did it. Have fun with it, because eventually it might start to thin, and you might feel your youth kind of just fading away from you like sand, like teardrops in the rain. So have fun while you can, please. You have to have fun with your hair before it's gone. Story 6. Okay, so we need to have clear backpacks, right? This kid puts quite the vulgar image depicting the counselor on one of his notebooks and packs it against the edge of the pack. Guns and drugs, the kind of thing that kids aren't supposed to have, so they just toss them into their backpack loose, and not wrapped up or stuck into a book or something. Story 7. Hey Joe, aren't you supposed to be in class? Yeah. One word. Doesn't look like much in text, but he said it with such full acceptance and resolution that the teacher didn't follow up or say anything else, just, "Okay, got it, you're not going. I'll move on and not waste any more time here." And they kept walking. Sometimes attitude is everything. Sometimes you can say a lot with a single word. As a teacher, I never fight to make random kids in the hall follow the rules. It's a bad path to start on. I get enough stress from my own class. I can't help but laugh at the teachers I see constantly yelling at kids in the hall that they don't even know. Story 8. I went to a Catholic grade school growing up that had a strict boys' hair length policy. It couldn't touch the collar of your shirt, and I wanted long hair. So the principal came in one day to talk to the class. When she was leaving the room, she called me out for my long hair in front of my classmates. My response was to point to the cross hanging above the door and said, "Jesus had long hair." She didn't know what to say right away and seemed embarrassed, but then pulled me outside and yelled at me to get it cut. Don't mess with Catholic nuns. You can almost call it a Hail Mary tactic. Well, once again, I feel like I've said this on this channel so many times, but your problem with trying to address a bad rule in a Catholic school is bringing up the Bible. They don't want to hear about that crap. They just want you to follow their strict rules. Gosh dang it. Story 9. In my private school, boys were required to wear a collared shirt. It really wasn't enforced until one day it was. I was wearing a sweater without a collared shirt underneath, and I had to go back to the dorm and change. I argued that I didn't look ratty or undressed at all, but they said rules were rules. The next day I wore a white t-shirt with a collar cut off from one of my other shirts stapled to it. It looked terrible, but rules are rules. Do-it-yourself builds. Story 10. In 3rd grade, early 90s, my brother did not want to participate in some sort of multiple class activities. He just hung around the edges until a teacher approached him and told him, "Now, dear, you can't be here without participating." Brother took what she said to heart and waited for a chance to slip away. He made it about 3 miles before a family friend noticed him and drove him the rest of the way home. I remember Mom being pretty upset at him, but even more angry at the school for taking 4 hours to notice he was gone when they took a head count after lunch. One day, my friends and I had gotten to school early for an extracurricular event. After the event, we decided we weren't really feeling school that day and decided to do the 3-hour walk home. One of my friend's mothers saw us about 2.5 hours into the walk. Story 11. Back in the 1980s, there was one kid in my school who was hardcore into the punk scene. Had a bright blue 6-inch high, razor-thin, stand-up straight mohawk. The principal gave him detention for being a distraction, etc., and his parting words that day were, "And tomorrow, no more blue mohawk." The next day, the kid came in with the same mohawk, only bright pink. He should have seen this one coming. Yeah, bright pink mohawk would be pretty difficult to miss. The hawk of the high school is the coolest man to exist. How dare someone try and rob the 80s of those razor-thin mohawks? How dare that, the principal? Don't you take that away from the 80s? That was precious to us. That and, like the flock of seagulls haircut and stuff like that. Why don't you just take the 80s out of the 80s? You can't. Story 12. No hats in school. In high school junior year, there was this one kid in my grade that was allowed to due to him having alopecia universalis, which is basically having rapid baldness. A new teacher wasn't aware that he was allowed to and asked him to take it off. The kid explained why he was able to, but the sub didn't believe him, forced him to take it off, and was being very cruel to him for wearing the hat / his lack of hair. The next day, everyone wore hats to school as a sort of rebellion against the teacher. She got really mad and started yelling at the students and said some nasty things. She got fired. Story 13. Senior year, my school banned jackets. A friend was cold, wore his jacket to lunch, and the VP told him to take it off. Friend pulled out the student handbook and asked where it said he couldn't wear it. VP flips for a while and ends up showing him the "or anything the administration seems disruptive" clause. Friend rolls his eyes but takes off his coat. The next day, a friend comes in with the same tweed sport coat the VP wore every day. Who the hell bans jackets? My school did once. They said it was dangerous if there was a fire. How the hell they came to that conclusion, I know not. However, the school was really poorly built with concrete walls and next to no heating, so at some times of the year, the indoor heat fell below 15 C. The Work Environment Authority recommends an indoor temperature of 20 to 24 C. We told our teachers to basically either let us wear jackets or fix the heating, otherwise we would report them. They let us wear them. Story 14. After the Columbine shooting, our school banned black trench coats. For the most part, nobody cared except the mysteriously gothic trench coat kid. He had worn a trademark black trench coat every single day because it made him different, and then all of a sudden the school tells him he can't do that anymore. So the kid went out of his way to find or make different colored trench coats and wore those instead. My favorite one was covered in duct tape. Too long didn't read, Gothic Joseph and the Technicolor trench coat. Reminds me of a guy who came to school every day dressed in old-fashioned formal clothing. Suits, top hats, cravats, fake fur coats. I bumped into him the other day and he still dresses like that. I'm glad he does. So, I was still in high school when, unfortunately, Columbine happened. And yeah, people got kind of weird about trench coats. And the unfortunate thing about that is me and two of my friends wore trench coats. I had like a green army surplus one. One of my friends had literally one designed after the Matrix. We just wore them because we were teens. We were, we were kind of old goths. Yeah, I had a goth phase in high school. But I don't know, it was fun. And to the person wearing top hats and cravats and stuff like that to school, I envy that. I wanted so bad in my 20s to dress up in some not just French Rococo, but I'm talking Rococo meets the 80s, Rococo punk, But I did not have the money for that. Folks, wear whatever you want and have fun. Story 15. Friend was told in high school by his guidance counselor not to waste his time applying to his dream school because he wouldn't get in. He got peed off and went to the principal, who told him it was the counselor's job to give her best opinion, so he trusts whatever she says. He applied anyway and got in. He took the acceptance letter, made a copy, and taped them to both the principal and counselor's door with "Thanks for nothing" written on both. He didn't even go to that school. He couldn't afford it, but it was the principle of the matter. The "I trust what my counselor says" thing is such a lazy attempt for the principal to essentially say, "I don't want to deal with trouble from my staff, so I won't even address the problem." Story 16. When I was in high school, there was a rule implemented that if you showed up late to school, you had to go to the front office to get a detention slip. You would then have to give it to the teacher for that period, who would then mark it down, and you were required to go to lunch detention for that day. I figured out by the third slip that literally no one cared, teachers, security, or students. So when I was subsequently late for the rest of the year, I would take out an old slip that I had from a previous detention, walk through school, give it to my teacher to mark down, then take it back to give to the lunch detention supervisor. But I never went to detention because the front office didn't have a record of me being late. I was late no less than 50 times my senior year, only having been reprimanded the initial 3 times. I even told my parents about it after I'd graduated, and even they agreed it was dumb and funny. My school had a similarly easy-to-abuse tardy system. 3 tardies less than 10 minutes late equaled an unexcused absence, and you were allowed 13 of those for every class. So that meant that you could miss the first 10 minutes of every class 38 times with no consequences except teacher annoyance. It also reset at the semester break. No idea why the policy was so lenient, except that it was a very upper-middle-class school full of high achievers who vastly outnumbered slackers like myself. Story 17. When I was in grade 7, our last class of the day, students would always bring in snacks. Our lunch shift was way too early in the day, so by the end of the day, we'd all be feeling hungry. And we were all told by our teacher that if we didn't have enough to share, we couldn't eat in the classroom. One day, almost all of us brought in enough food to share, even with the students that didn't bring anything in. We even synchronized the times that we pulled all of our food out. Our teacher was clueless. She had no idea what to tell us. There wasn't any school-wide no food in classrooms rule, so she couldn't run to the principal. Finally, she gave in to our malicious compliance and allowed us to share food for the rest of the period.
Honest to Pete, if I was a teacher and I knew that the students in my last period class, were constantly starving because their lunch period was stupidly early because schools don't care about kids, they just care about organizing the numbers and schedules, and humanity doesn't actually enter into that. But if I was that teacher with the last period, I'd be like, hey, I'll just order pizza and stuff every once in a while, and salads and veggie trays and stuff, and we'll just all snack every day, 'cause why not? I'd be a great teacher.
Story 18. The guy was wearing shoes against the uniform policy and was asked to put on shoes from lost property. He went around school barefoot all day. How does a pair of shoes end up in lost property? I'm imagining another kid at some point also walking around all day barefoot wonder where the F my shoes are. Plenty of students would bring in shoes that they only planned on wearing for gym or something. Story 19. Last year, our school imposed a ban on backpacks and bags in general since they were apparently a safety hazard. 2 days later, some guy in my year group comes in carrying his books and pencil case in a microwave. Dude made national news. Story 20. A kid was passing notes and the teacher caught him and insisted he had to give the note so she could read it out loud. He ate the note. I can only imagine what it said that he felt the need to eat it, lol. A teacher drawn in stickman style with huge round boobs, beaver, and her name with an arrow pointing at the drawing, as if I actually look like this. Story 21. My daughters both went to a Catholic high school. My younger one had a bit of a wild streak. The girls were required to wear a skirt every day to school. My daughter did not care for this rule and wore her skirt around her head one day since the dress code required the student to wear a skirt, just not wear. I was told that she was wearing spandex underneath. That's how my daughter got a new rule in her high school dress code. That's a good one. I also rebelled against the rule at my Catholic high school. First, I wore pants until I got too many detentions, so I started wearing the absolute most obnoxious outfits that fit the dress code. Generally, a leopard print skirt, knee-high zebra socks, and some other loud shirt. Or I would wear pants under the skirt. They changed the dress code the next year. Girls gotta wear pants again.
Okay, I know there have been a few videos where I've kind of ripped on Catholic schools a little bit. And I wasn't raised Catholic, but I did date someone who was Catholic for about 4 years. I got to know a bit about that church, that denomination. And can I just say, Catholic schools, I don't know what you think you're accomplishing, but I feel like you produce some of the most rebellious, wild teenagers and adults. I feel like you have the opposite effect of what you're trying to go for, so maybe reevaluate.
Story 22. The canteen stopped selling sachets of red sauce due to the mess some kids were making. My friend carried a huge bottle of red sauce in his bag for at least a month and provided illegal red sauce for the cost of 5p per squirt. Made a fortune. Story 23. I was in a Christian high school at the time. The day before winter break rolls around, and I had packed a few Toblerone chocolate bars and some notes for the teachers I most appreciated, with the intention of leaving them as a Christmas gift. Before school, the principal made a public announcement that students were not to give any teachers any gifts unless we were going to give all teachers the same gift. This was obviously a bit of a problem since I couldn't exactly come back the next day with additional candy bars, so I marched into her office to address this issue. Upon entering the office, I made a show of opening a chocolate bar and breaking off exactly one piece and placing it on her desk. I told her that I was going to give her a full candy bar, but now I had to share her chocolate bar with other teachers that I didn't really care so much about anyways. That rule was quietly lifted. Story 24. Our school collectively hijacked an assembly by singing along to Journey's Don't Stop Believing after the teachers forgot to turn off autoplay on YouTube. Did your school consist of small-town girls and city boys? Story 25. In 11th grade, now 30 years ago, we were told to use Memorial Day as a weather makeup day from Hurricane Hugo. Us students and many teachers felt this was disrespectful and suggested just adding the day to the end of the school year. The state insisted. Very few people showed up for school, including me, my brother, and most of the faculty. Same, but ours was on a Saturday. Almost no one came to school.
Hey, schools, can I give you just an idea? Just throwing this one out there. Have like 5 days that you normally have tacked on to like the end of the school year or whatever, and those are like extra possible days or something, you know, like instead of, you know, like tell students that like the last day of school is, you know, June 6th, except that little 5-day period, you can use those and spend them on other days throughout the year. Like, hey, it's raining really hard. Should we use one of those 5 days up? And you use one, whatever. And if you use them all up, then yeah, school goes all the way to June 6th. But if you don't use any of them, then school gets done early. Either way, it's a win-win. I'm sure it goofs up scheduling and final tests, but I'm pretty sure you could figure that out if you thought about it for 5 minutes.
Story 26. My brother missed enough school during the year that the school required he attend summer school. The penalty for not attending summer school? You'd be kicked out of summer school. So he never went. And they didn't hold him back because he knew all the material. Story 27. I had a teacher who got into a power struggle with every reasonably smart kid, so we tended not to try in her class. As a result, she began to grade the progress monitoring tool we used. This proved to me that the tool didn't matter. If it did, she would have graded it from the start instead of waiting until she realized she looked bad. So I began to fail every test I took on the platform. She was really angry at me and told me to call my parents, but my parents backed me because choosing to fail is not a violation of any rule. Should have used that with my parents. Story 28. Kid peed in the trash can when the substitute wouldn't let him leave to use the restroom. Story 29. There was a presentation on vaping last year by some poor woman from an advocacy group or something, and every sentence, or whenever she paused, the whole assembly, all 300 kids in my grade, would give a massive standing ovation. We weren't stopped until we had done it like 15 times. Holy crap, we did the exact same thing to the Balfour representative, guy from this company who spent an entire hour trying to convince us to buy class rings, shirts, socks, pants, etc. Our class is a little bigger, about 900, and we just erupt almost every word. The guy started playing into it too. He would make dramatic pauses to give us time to clap. Because of the clapping, we missed the only important part of his speech, which was about buying caps and gowns, and nearly everyone missed the deadline.
We had to have a lecture about paying attention, and then they extended the deadline to buy caps and gowns. I will say, I wouldn't necessarily encourage this for certain speakers and stuff, because usually they're folks who have good intentions, and they're trying to come to your school to help out, and it can be a little disheartening to be like, well, no one heard me at all. I'm glad I wasted my time. But I mean, if their message is just eye-rolling, then I guess maybe. How do you judge that? I don't have good advice here. I don't know. Just use your best judgment. Or don't. I don't know. Story 30. Blistering heat to the point of people passing out. We're all forced to wear black trousers. We're dying of the heat, and a guy comes in shorts, gets sent home only to return after reading the school rules on uniform. He is in school colors plaid skirt. Effing legendary. Story 30. We hired a mariachi band to follow our dean around school for a day. Best senior prank. Story 32. Not me, but my friend's dad, so a good 50 years ago. His teacher told him his tie was the most important part of the uniform and he had to wear it no matter what. That lunchtime, he gathered half his school year, and the next day, about 100 people turned up wearing nothing but underwear and a tie. Story 33. Late 80s. My high school banned tank tops, but they were allowed with something over them. They also banned mesh or sheer shirts, only allowed with something under them. Guy I knew pretty much every day wore a tank top with a mesh shirt over it. Story 34. In 5th grade, I saw a kid punch another kid across the face during playtime and run away from school. They just let him go. I regret not running away from school more often, to be honest. Story 35. A guy I know ran a campaign to lift my old high school's strict policy on facial hair, which is to have none unless religiously exempt, which they gave you a card for that I and probably others called the beard badge. He refused to shave and had a banner and shirt made that said, "With a great beard comes great responsibility." So if you can all imagine, there was a point in my life where I did not have my mustache. Just a clean baby face. But there was also a time in the later of my high school years, junior or senior year, where I just grew out a big just a goatee, just a horrible little chin rat. It wasn't great, but I'm glad that I was allowed to at my school. And I think more high school students should be allowed to have facial hair, because if I'm any indicator, that crap is funny. Story 33. In high school, during the student body president election, my friend started a campaign that was kind of a meme at the time. It was a poster that featured a green, faceless figure in a suit that said, "Vote for nobody. Nobody tells the truth. Nobody will fight for you. Nobody cares," with nobody being personified as this faceless figure. We put up posters for it with all the others and even started a Facebook page for jokes. My buddy even had a green full-body morph suit and planned on running on stage during the other speeches and dancing around. Eventually, the admins got word of what he wanted to do and called him in and told them that if he so much as even went to the assembly in costume or not, he would be suspended. So he didn't go to the assembly and all the posters were taken down. Instead, he just showed up to school in the suit and just walked around waving at people and giving finger guns at passerbys. He was suspended anyway and went down as a legend for it. Story 37. Not a specific person, but when a heat wave hit the UK a few years ago and schoolboys in many schools started wearing skirts in protest of having to wear trousers in the scorching heat because there was no stipulation of gender in the uniform regulations. These lads are only a few years younger than me, and back in my school days, wearing a skirt would get you called gay and ostracized, so it impresses me both in the sense of how fast times have changed and because being technically correct is the best kind of correct. I like the stories that I've read here about, guys choosing to wear skirts and women who are choosing to wear, pants instead of skirts that are required at school. God. Schools. You know what? Just always, folks, wear stuff to school that makes the school mad. I'm not officially saying this, if I'm not allowed to, and this is a joke. This is parody, but do it. Do it. Story 38. Someone stole a key from the janitor. He just left them on his desk. It happened to be a universal key to all the locks except for the server room. The server room had a second hidden door, which they found. They came in after school and stole the server from the school. All the grades and data for the students were on those servers. The teachers had to figure out how to recreate all the students' grades, which honestly, they did poorly. Pretty much everyone passed every class. You could just argue for a better grade. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.